Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Saturday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. It's spring. Can you believe it? I got my vaccine yesterday. I'm getting my next one on April 9th. Hopefully, we'll be able to reemerge out of our cocoons, and as my dear friend Dolly Levi used to say, rejoin the human race. I am so excited about today's show because I get to celebrate with all of you, my dear friend, Margot Astrachan. Now, I have known Margot, dare I say, over 25 years. I first met her as a prolific photographer, and she's come through the ranks, and she is a very prolific producer on Broadway. We're going to talk all about that in a few moments. But I'm all about celebrating a person and their body of worth. What makes a great artist? And no matter what side of the footlights you're on, it takes great artists to make our theater tick. And I hate to bring this up, but today marks 373 days since our theaters went dark. And so I really have to ask you, Margot, first of all, welcome. And how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy time that we find ourselves in?
Well, I'm not making any money, but nobody is.
No.
But actually, most of us have been working right through this, planning for when things reemerge. So I have things on both sides of the pond. I have a play that I optioned, which now has a wonderful partner with me, Richard Winkler, and that is going to the Birmingham Rep in Birmingham, England, and then should move to the West End is what we're planning. So that's all in progress, and it's going to have major stars, and I can't tell you yet who it is.
I don't get an exclusive?
Not yet. But when I can, I will. But
now,
it will
I also
be directed by Sean Foley, I just want you to tell you, what I can tell you is that it will be directed by their artistic director, Sean Foley, who's a multiple Olivier Award winner. That I can tell you. And then we have something here, but you ask. Go ahead.
No, one of the shows that I know that was scheduled to open just as everything shut down was Diana, which you're one of the producers of. I do want to ask you, in addition to Diana, what did your calendar look like on March 11th of last year?
So Diana had just had its 6th preview, as I recall. No opening night yet. And the Prom had announced their tour, which will be going out, the tour of the Broadway show of the Prom. And we were working on Radio Galaxy. There was also a small musical that I was kind of shepherding as well. That will have to hold until we can see, what's going to happen. Yeah, so everything that just shut.
So what were your earliest memories of hearing about COVID? And did you think, I know that 6 was supposed to open the night that all the theater shut down. And they even put up a reopening date, very ambitious thought, May 6th, I think it was, of last year. Of course, that didn't happen. And they keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. I don't think anybody knows when, where, and how we're going to reopen the theater. Well, but what were your earliest memories of hearing about COVID?
I heard that something was going on in Italy in January. Little did we know that what came in actually came from Europe, from Italy, as opposed to coming from China. I knew something was going on, and it kind of concerned me, but we weren't talking about it yet, and everybody thought it would be like a bad flu and it would go away. So really, it was the beginning of March when we all thought, oh my goodness, this is bad, in terms of any kind of business for theater. I think we were aware, but we didn't realize how bad it was, right along that early spring, late winter period.
And of course, I'm going to ask you a question now that you don't have the answer to, but just based on speculation, what you've heard, how do you think, or how do you anticipate that theater will come back? And I already know that theater is already open in Australia, and they're doing very, very well. But then again, they did a complete shutdown. It's a much smaller area to contain as well. So they did everything that needed to be done in order to get back on track. How do you think that theater will come back, especially in New York City?
Well, there's a big tour of Moulin Rouge going out in Australia, as a matter of fact. This is all up for debate. I mean, right now, they're saying we could start again in June. This is the latest. But the Broadway League, of which I'm a member, which is our trade organization, which produces the Tonys, as you know, and so forth, is saying, just a minute, Equity and the League are sparring because of COVID, health benefit, how to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So you can't really run a big musical as we know them today at under 70%. You're losing money. And the union would like it to be less. So to open in June, it's up in the air. I mean, they're discussing it as we speak, what to do. It used to be that a break even for a big musical was 50% if it was well run. That's long gone. Mm-hmm. So under 70% or so, you can't stay open. You're losing money. Mm-hmm. And we don't have state-sponsored theater the way the UK does. So the UK furloughed, all these people, but mm-hmm. they were supporting them. And there's all kind of support coming from the UK government, not so much here. And Senator Schumer, God bless him, and our governor are fighting, to get more help. But as of yesterday, they were talking about June, which surprised a lot of us. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean,
speaking of June, and if you're not able to answer this question, I respect that and I understand this. But what do you hear about the Tony Awards? We didn't have them at all this past year.
We're having them, but they'll be virtual at the moment, unless that also is able to be changed. Yeah.
Now, Margot, I want to go back. We're going to, I don't know a lot about your past. Maybe your friends do or don't, and we're going to find out today, I hope. Are you a true New Yorker? Are you originally from New York?
Yes. I was born in Lenox Hill Hospital.
Okay. And do you have brothers and sisters?
I have a sister up in Vermont, which surprises me. This is such a New York girl and a New York husband. You're what? But they're very happy with you.
Did they move up because of COVID, or were they've been there for years?
No, my brother-in-law was recruited to be a partner at probably the major law firm in Burlington.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you grow up in a household where arts were the exception or the rule?
Oh, we had backers auditions in my living room.
Really? Yes.
We had, if I may, a Jewish, you can't take it with you. We were three generations in a very elegant apartment on 86th Street off Fifth Avenue. And my grandfather loved violinists, so he would bring starving musicians home. We also had the horoscope read to us every night, but only the good news.
Well, today is National Astrology Day.
There you go. And so the joke in the family was, here comes Grandpa water the soup, because we never knew who he was going to bring home for dinner. I grew up with the arts. My grandmother had been trained as an opera singer, and we played the piano and sang every night. So I was trained to be a singer, but my family and I, went to the High School of Music and Art, which is now part of LaGuardia. I'm on the board there now. So life comes full circle. But my family didn't think that was safe for a girl. So after incredible study, they thought that being a photojournalist was safe. 3 o'clock in the morning with 3 cameras around my neck, that was fine.
Now, well, did you ever pursue a career as a singer or not?
I did stock. early on, but really they did not want it.
And when did the decision happen for you to become a photojournalist?
Through a computer error, I got classified as pre-journalism, and I thought, okay,
I love that.
this is true. So, and then because of the graduate teaching assistants at BU and journalism school, and because of the head of the photography department, who had just retired as head of the city desk at the Chicago Sun-Times, he was a brilliant guy and he wanted to teach, I got to go out to study with Ansel Adams. And he kind of took me under his wing, more than he took me under his wing. And I stayed in his house with his family. And I was very lucky and became a photographer. Yeah.
And obviously he was a mentor to you. I want to ask you, who were some of the mentors along the way who have really paved the way, shaping Margot Astrachan's life and her career? And that could be on either side, as a producer, as a photographer, and in the other realms of your life as well.
Well, I mean, I was very lucky along the way with the people that heard me sing and encouraged me, and the people that saw my photography and encouraged me. So I was very fortunate with that. And I was able to publish my first story when I was still in school. And I think that the kindness of people, there's a wonderful woman named Jackie Florin, who unfortunately just passed away, who believed that I could produce and took me in as a partner in the first couple of shows. I mean, it's that kind of thing. It's when somebody holds your hand a little bit and says you can, and you do. I think theater is, as catty as people can be, it's very warm-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
The family, because you're putting so much at risk. This is live performance. There's so much at risk that I think people help each other as much as they can. And Jackie, bless her memory, really helped me.
Now, I want to go back years ago, you and I really appreciate tremendously your reaching out to me to be a part of your first collective at the APAP, for those who know, Arts Presenters and Performers. You brought me in to be a part of that. Were you producing at that point? What brought you into APAP?
Friends. My college roommate had very dear friends who were members, and each thing along the way, it's what you're saying. They said, you should be a member of this. You're starting to produce. You should be a member, and you should, know what this is. I had been singing again, I don't know if you knew that. And I was doing shows.
I didn't know that, as a matter of fact.
So I took a show to London, and when I performed in London, I met the head of the Jermyn Street Theater and got invited to be, ultimately started working with them. I worked with the King's Head first with Dan Crawford because of it, and became American Artistic Director of first the King's Head and then Jermyn Street Theater. And through that I started. And then because I was performing at the same time and had done the Algonquin in some good rooms here, they said, you should do APAP, you should do a booth. I said, what is that? And I found out. And you were wonderful. You were my experiment. You were my first year. And second, right? We did 2 years.
And Bobby Horowitz, who's watching the show, she was part of that group with John Meyer. And it was just such a great, and our dear friend Heather Duke, who I miss every day. Yes, also part of that group. But putting your toes in the water as a producer, what was the first show? What did you learn from that helped you with the next show? What did you say, I'll never do that again? How does one get into the business of being a producer? And it's like walking a tightrope, let's face it.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. The first Broadway show that I was a co-producer on was On a Clear Day, You Can See Forever, with Harry Connick. My takeaway from that was I knew at the Sitzprobe when we did the run through with the orchestra for the first time that it was in trouble.
Well, I
And
want to go back for a moment. I remember distinctly,
by the way.
I remember distinctly being at a Seder at Bobby Horowitz's and you mentioning that you were going to be working on this show and the excitement that you had about working on it.
Yeah, until it went wrong.
And so what did you pick up that day that you knew that you were in trouble? And do you think it could have been fixed?
I think it could have. I know it could have. It is very interesting, Richard, and you will understand this. There is a difference between a star and a personality in the public's mind. Harry Connick is a personality. When they did Pajama Game, which was the show they did with him before, he could glow. It was all about him. In Clear Day, they made him this sad, depressed psychiatrist who's trying to take care of this person that's coming from the other world. And he had to kind of lay back and couldn't be himself. I finally persuaded them to give him one of the songs that swung, because you can't just have him do just ballads. That guy swings.
Right.
I think with a different cast, maybe it would have been okay. But the public was expecting Harry Connick. And they got, he's a very good actor. So they got a very good actor playing a sad, depressed psychiatrist. And they didn't.
Was it the same team that brought him, from Pajama Game?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, that they chose On a Clear Day specifically for him.
No.
That's not true.
No, it was supposed to be Matthew Broderick. And something went wrong. I'm not going to go into why, but they needed a new star. Nothing wrong with Matthew Broderick. It's just a disagreement. And Harry Connick is a big star. And that's not wrong. It was just the wrong role for somebody that the public perceives as an ebullient, swinging singer. And they got a very sad, depressed psychiatrist is what they got.
What kept you coming back? If that was this was your first show out, and then that happens. What is it about producing that drives Margot Astrachan?
Because the process of, a Broadway show a musical involves about 100 people if you look in your playbill.
Yes.
And it's a dynamic, exciting, wonderful world to be in, with wonderfully talented people, producers as well as creatives. My phone is going to be ignored. So I'm not picking it up. So
it may be your next big hit.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I think the joy of working in a team, it is a family. And also the joy of working with people that invest with you and care and communicating with them and making them feel a part of something exciting. It's just a wonderful thing to do, but it's not an easy thing to do.
Hello, I'm Miss Astrachan. It's been according to the practice. We don't mind.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. But I want to ask you, Margot, because I am a theater historian somewhat, there was a time where you would have one name at the top of the marquee, David Merrick Presents. And I realize that it's cost prohibitive for that to happen now. But when David Merrick was the producer, he truly had his hand in every pot. When you've got so many people that are coming together, how does that work out?
Well, first of all, just to put it in perspective, Brigadoon, we all know the show Brigadoon, came to Broadway for $175,000. So it could be one person. It wasn't actually, but it could be. It costs so much money to bring a show to Broadway now, somewhere between $13 and $20 million, a big musical. And so the money has to be raised by a number of people. Also, it's the general partners who do a lot of the heavy lifting. They are the David Merricks. There may be a team of them it could be 2 or 3 or 4 sometimes, but they do the heavy lifting. The rest of us, we kind of know what we're good at and what we can do. So that's how it has to happen. It becomes a company. But the general partners still have final say, and they should.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there still is a hierarchy.
And I'm going to ask this question. I ask it very respectfully, of course, but what do you bring to the table as a producer?
Well, first of all, I can read a score. I don't think there are too many of us that can.
It's true.
For starters. And I've had my acting training and I've had my dance training. I mean, so I'm not coming, I come with certain skill.
Absolutely.
And having been a journalist, I can write. So, you know, I think I bring something to the table. I think all of us, you know, bring different skills. And I enjoy, you know, working with the general partners, and I have a lot of respect for them because they're taking the bulk of the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And being a general partner on Radio Galaxy, this wonderful play, by the way, I'd love to talk about that for a minute.
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Talking about risk is, yes, discovering a new voice and championing that. You know, it takes a lot of courage. And this playwright is remarkable. And so the reason that we are taking it to England is because in England, number one, they are more open to plays. And this is a new playwright without a no name. I mean, not a new playwright, but a new name, I should say. She's had out of town, you know, productions. And also because it costs less to do a really quality production over there. And it's possible to do great theater over there, just the way it is on Broadway. I'm not denigrating what we have, but it's much more costly here. And to start a new voice over there where the audiences are more open to plays and a new voice, not just known names, we felt was exactly the right decision. And my partner on it, Richard Winkler, was very strong on it, and I agree with him. And it will be developed over there. But it is, you know, a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gutsy, you know, to start something new, but it's on our shoulders. So if it goes wrong, we can blame ourselves.
Well, why is it more costly to produce in New York than it is in London?
Labor, everything costs more. Mm-hmm. Theater rent, every single thing costs more.
Very interesting. I mean, these are things that, you know, I didn't know. So what brings you into a project? And, you know, I'm all about celebrating. So if I ask a question, I don't want names or specific projects mentioned for the obvious reasons. I want to celebrate everything. But was there ever a situation that you got yourself into that you thought, oh my God, why am I here? And how did you pull yourself through it?
Well, I think Clear Day, when I was so worried about it. But
how long did the show run after it opened? I know that it was a short-lived run.
6 months, 5 or 6 months somewhere. I'm trying to remember now, it was a while ago. I stayed with it because I have genuine respect for the lead producers on it, really. And I think they did everything they could. And I have nothing but good to say about them. Sometimes that happens. You know, terrific producers, terrific show would have been, terrific actor. You know, I mean, Harry Connick can act.
That's right.
Just was not written, you know, it wasn't for him because of the audience perception, I think.
Was the word of mouth bad on the production? I mean, obviously he has a huge fan base. Why weren't they rushing to the theater to see him?
Because I think that the reviews were not good, and the Times review, and you know, the New York Times can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
It, you know, if they don't like it, it's really, really painful. Yeah.
Since you've come into this, how many shows have you been involved with? Let's just talk specifically Broadway. I know that you've done so much in London as well, but specifically for Broadway.
Yeah, I've done other things as well. I think I'd have to count in my resume, but I think about 8 of them altogether.
Okay. What has changed since you first got involved?
Costs more. A lot more. Yeah.
Now, and based on that fact, do you think that theaters can operate under the guidelines of COVID currently at
No.
either 50 or 75%?
75%, yes, if you sell 75% of the tickets, but that's still the same problem. People have to want to see the show, and they have to be willing, to come out post-COVID.
Well, I've mentioned this before on other interviews, but I know how difficult it is in the theater to get people to turn their cell phones off. I can only imagine the announcement being made before the show, please keep your mask on at all times. And then the lights go down and someone takes their mask off, and there's going to be pandemonium in that aisle for the people sitting next to them. How do you even combat that? Or can you?
I don't know if on Broadway we will have that problem. People tend to be pretty well behaved, and I think that the ushers are going to have to keep an eye too. And if they see anything like that, they'll have to find a tactful way to get them out of there. I don't see that as a problem in New York. We're not talking about Texas or California where who knows what they think. But in New York, people I think we won't have that. I just think it's whether people will come, particularly in the early days when theaters open again. I think it's going to be until everybody feels they're vaccinated and until the government is saying we have herd immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the resistance to vaccine that we're encountering, I don't know.
And currently, do you find, for the most part, that you are finding projects or that projects are finding you?
Projects find me at about 2 a day, even now. And so it's more they find me. I mean, even Radio Galaxy, I saw in a reading, what TRU is, Bob?
Oh, yes.
This wonderful organization that helps emerging writers and
when Theater Resources Unlimited.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. Bob Ost.
Yeah.
So get involved.
Resources Unlimited. And it was in their reading, and I only saw it by accident. Bob called me and he said, it's written by a woman, and my whole talkback panel are men. Please, would you come? I said, it's Sunday. I don't want. He said, please, So there you go. And, people were crying in the audience by the end. I should tell you, it's a wonderfully funny comedy until it's not. And people were crying at the end. I mean, it's a really brilliant play. And I thought, I can't leave this. I've never done this. I said, I can't leave this. I'm going to option. I said right at the talkback, I'm going to option it. Now, that isn't normal. Usually things will come and I will read them. I try to calmly sit down and read, or I won't, or I'll see from the synopsis, no, this is not for me. But in that case, it was a fluke, and I'm very glad I went.
Well, the theater is full of flukes.
To things.
The theater is full of flukes, and I want to ask you, what was the one show that you thought was going to be a major hit? Maybe it was Clear Day when you first got involved, but anything else that you thought was going to be a huge hit that did not become a huge hit? Let's start there, and if you can explain to us the reasons. You've already discussed Clear Day, the reasons why you thought that it didn't succeed.
We all thought the Prom was going to be a big hit. Audiences absolutely adored it. I mean, really adored it. People were coming 2 and 3 times. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. Maybe it was the title. you know, that people seeing it and going home and telling their neighbors, go and see the Prom, and people are going, well, that's for teenagers. Maybe, I don't know why. That I can't explain. It was really a lovely show, and the tour will be very successful.
Well, I remember, Dori Berenstein is a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
And of course, the show opens, and then there was that incredible moment in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yeah.
Do you think that that helped or hurt the box office at that time?
I think it was neutral. I think the way that it was done was natural.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that the actual number that they chose to do, where the kiss is at the very end, is so terrific. And it was even in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was neutral, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see a survey on it.
Now, with the shows that you've produced, I mean, when the Tony Awards come around, it's getting the right number on the Tony Awards. Whether the show wins Tonys or not is inconsequential. It's just getting the right number that's going to sell the show.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been a moment in any of the shows that you've done where that either worked in your favor or detracted from the success of the show?
Well, on Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, the number that they picked for the Tonys was exactly the right one. And it just went over like blockbusters, you know, really fabulous. It was the lead with the two ladies in two separate rooms, and he's trying to keep them apart so they don't find out about each other. It was really the right thing to do. I think that was...
I want to say it took Stephen Luttvack years to get that show to Broadway.
Yes. Yeah, it did. It did, for many reasons. And God bless him that he did. And the hassle is still going on because in England, they want to do a musical of the Lady Killers. Not the Lady Killers, I mean, of Kind Hearts and Carnettes, which is what...
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the whole thing. But yes, it took years to bring it.
And has there been a show that just was gangbusters for you in London that came to New York and just died?
Not for me, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not that.
And I want to go back again to something we touched upon a few minutes ago, and that's the involvement of everyone's, and you've already talked about what it is that you bring to the table. How much of a voice are you allowed to have in the negotiating meetings before it even gets to getting on the boards in the rehearsal process?
It depends on the general partners. Some really want more involvement than others. And so I can't say that there's any general rule about it. It really depends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, as far as social media is concerned, because we are doing this virtually now, and probably now more than ever, you're probably having to operate more with social media than you have had in the past. Do you embrace social media or do you fight it?
I kind of ignore it.
Answer.
I really don't. Richard, I need you to teach me, because
I'll gladly teach you.
I have a Facebook page and I look at it once in a while, and all these pictures were on there that I have no idea how they got there. And I don't know how to post anything, and I need lessons. So I'm totally the wrong person. I know that I should, but I don't. Yeah.
I have a comment here, and I'm going to read the comment, and then I'd like you to respond to it. Grant X says, you asked, so I would not go see the Prom because of the name, especially at ticket prices. It did feel too much like a show designed for kids.
See? I'm so glad you read that. I think that's what hurt us, because in fact, it was a very, very grown-up show with very grown-up ideas, and it was terrific theater.
And here's a comment from Bobby Horowitz. I'm glad, please weigh in with your comments, everyone. I heard a couple of people on the street talking. someone was speaking with them and asked if they were seeing the Prom while they were in New York. And they said, we have no teenagers with us.
There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you, Bobby. By the way, it was Bobby who introduced me to Jermyn Street Theater.
Oh, were you involved with Nick and Nora?
Yeah. Somebody, yeah. And she was tremendously influential for me, and I love her.
Now, it was the theater that brought me to New York. I love the theater. I love going to the theater. I love performing. I love sitting in the audience. I love the theater. But I have found, and you can weigh in on this, I've heard that most advertising dollars now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, goes into the tourist trade as opposed, around the country, as opposed to what's going on in New York. I look at the phenomenon of a show like Book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
Book of Mormon, no one knew who the actors were in the show.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a particular song that people knew. Obviously, it was the creators of South Park that may have had something to do with it. But explain the success of a show like that doesn't necessarily have a star. You
Mm-hmm.
talked earlier about someone like Harry Connick Jr.
Mm-hmm.
in the show and being a detriment to the show as opposed to being an asset.
Well, he was a detriment. It may have been a detriment to him. I don't really know.
But, explain the success of a show. Is it just word of mouth? Is it the way it's promoted? Who can even gauge what makes a show a successful show?
Well, there's some pretty sophisticated advertising now as opposed to even 15, 20 years ago. And people really do know how to study audience response and gauge, what they're doing. But remember that the bulk of the market, is tourists. Tourism is very, very important to theater and to New York. The Times Square area, the theater district, where almost all the Broadway theaters are. There's one Broadway designated theater, Lincoln Center, but the rest, are in the Times Square area. So that's 40 out of 41 theaters, and the restaurants and shops comprise 15% of the New York City economy. Mm-hmm. So it's a very serious thing when they are dark. And in terms of why Book of Mormon, as opposed to, let's say, Gentleman's Guide, which was, did recoup, mm-hmm. but was a success d'estime as opposed to a great big huge hit. It's fun. It's a little risque, talking about Book of Mormon, and the marketing was brilliant. It was just brilliant.
No, absolutely.
And but it's those dollars. More people go to Broadway shows than all the sports teams combined every year.
Now, I want to talk to you. We've talked about, two different ends of the spectrum. There's On a Clear Day. Mm-hmm. On a Clear Day, of course, from the 1960s. Mm-hmm. But they chose to rewrite the book and to come in with a new book. Maybe there are some who would think that version of On a Clear Day would not work today. I don't know. But I'd like to get your honest thoughts on revisals and the fact of rewriting someone's work from the past and bringing that to a new audience.
Well, I've been doing it with Shakespeare for centuries.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. To take something that was a major hit, though, and then rework it, you better be pretty darn good at what you're doing. And I think there's no rule of thumb, but it's not always a good idea. Sometimes it's better to just revive it, but everybody wants to get their 2 cents in, I think.
Well, I'm going to tell you what Leroy Reams says about it. He says it's
I would be very curious. What did he say?
He says it's like baking a red velvet cake. You and I both know what a red velvet cake looks like and what it tastes like. Mm-hmm. But let's say that you say, Margot, I'm going to make a red velvet cake tonight, but I'm going to leave this ingredient out, and I'm going to leave this ingredient out, and I'm going to leave this ingredient out. and I'm going to replace it with this, this, and this. It damn well better taste better than the original. Otherwise, why bother? And I'm not, I don't want to give names away or anything, but very successful show was done at a dinner theater several years ago. And one of the people that was involved with the original production was with me. And the director came in and talked about a change that they made in the show that really, for no reason, except we want to put our own stamp on it. And the person who was involved in the original said, did it make it better? And I feel that as a theater goer, if I go to see Kiss Me Kate, I want to see Kiss Me Kate.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that the sensibilities of audiences are changing, but I love Turner Classic Movies this month. They've been showing these films with the reflective view backwards of how times have changed. Mm-hmm. And I think that if I don't see anything wrong, and I'd like to get your take on this, of doing these classic shows as they were written, and then doing a talk back with the audience after the show, mm-hmm. about how we're looking at those things from today's point of view.
Well, they do that at Encores. They'll do a talk back after, mm-hmm. Which is highly educational for a producer. I always try to go, well, we'll be going next year, because of what the audience thinks and has to say, like the people that commented on the prom, that you read the comments. Mm-hmm. I think you're right. If you're going to redo it, it had better be better than the original, or don't bother. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is, and a lot of the times it's not. But with a great story and great writing, with Shakespeare, they look at all the things that have been born out of Shakespeare plays that are wonderful. Mm-hmm. West Side Story, as we know, is Romeo and Juliet. And it's wonderful. It's a masterpiece in its own right, but it wouldn't have existed without Shakespeare all those centuries ago. It depends on the skill of the writers. They better be darn good. It's like what Leroy Reams said, that red velvet cake better be better.
I always love that. I want to ask you, Margot, have you ever made a decision as a producer solely on your heart? And when did it work in your favor? And when did it backfire on you?
Well, The Inheritance, which is something I invested in, I wasn't a producer on. I knew I wouldn't make any money, but I believed in it, and I, did it from the heart. I guess that we are emotional in this business, and sometimes you do something because you feel it's important to do it, mm-hmm. but you're going to lose your shirt on it. Yeah. So yeah, that was one, I think.
And before I move to my next question, speaking of The Inheritance,
yeah,
was it the length of the show? Because everyone, I didn't see it, unfortunately, yeah. but everyone I know who saw it said it was a life-affirming show to see. Everyone I know who saw it loved it. But it was a long show. Yeah. And do you think that it would work in another medium better?
Well, Angels in America is a very long show, and it's fine. The length, maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe it could have been said in a more compacted way, and the length may have hurt it. I don't know. Was it a masterpiece like Angels in America? No. Mm-hmm. It was very good, though. But there's a difference between something that's just really a masterpiece and something that's very, very good.
And I want to ask you, going back to the prom for a moment, from a producer's perspective, yeah. You feel that this will work very successfully on the road.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because the movie that came out, Ryan Murphy, one of the general partners on the Broadway show, did the movie for Netflix and directed it.
Mhm.
And so many people saw it and fell in love with it and realized it wasn't just about high school. And I think I know that 2 regionals called me and said, "Can you get us on the tour?" Because of the film. And I think so. I think the film is really going to help us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I asked the
We
question.
also did that with Radio Galaxy. We had somebody who wanted, or still does, to do what's called a live capture, which is different than the prom. The prom was a whole separate movie with a separate cast, as we know. Diana was done as a live capture with equity guidelines, which is very interesting, and that will be released. And that's the exact show, no audience in the theater, and particular protocols for the actors.
Now, is that still in
Somebody wants to do it with Radio Galaxy in England. We said no, we didn't feel it was the time. We're going to hold off on that. And we may agree to do it later on, but we have film interest in that play. By the way, that's Michelle Alden Kushner. I should say our author's name if I'm going to be touting the play. Wonderful writer. But so I think that it sounds like I was digressing, but I was following a train of thought. I think the movie of the prom is going to be tremendously helpful to the tour of the live show.
I want to go back to the live capture of Diana. Do you think that are they going to just release it through Netflix on a limited basis, or will it be there? I'm a subscriber to Netflix. I can go in and watch anything just about any time. I watched the prom the night that it first aired, and loved it, by the way. And I can go and watch it tonight if I choose to. Do you think that by doing this with Diana, that will help or hurt the production when it comes to Broadway?
The only answer I can give you is that years ago, baseball games used to be blacked out in the home city because they thought people wouldn't buy tickets to go to the stadium. Subsequently, they found out that it was the opposite effect, and that's why you can both see it televised or go to your home city stadium. I think that it enhances people's desire to go see it. I think it will work in our favor, very much so. Yeah.
When theater does come back, we all love the experience of being with an audience in a theater, but do you think that it could ever work with shows, with people being able to see a live stream from their homes as it's happening, as you do with certain events, sporting events, for example?
Well, I think it'll work, but there's nothing like being there.
I agree.
It's a totally different experience. I think people would subscribe to it, and certainly people that are not in New York or not in Chicago or wherever, the theater is, but it's not the same as live.
And how many projects do you have currently that you are working on? And with COVID happening now, how are you able to do the work that you're doing in terms of what the future may hold? When we don't know when the next shoe is going to drop, or if the next shoe will even drop at this point.
Well, I have a play in the very early stages that I can't really speak about. Then I have Radio Galaxy, which is pretty well developed and ready to be produced. The Prom, that's locked up in the Longacre, but will emerge. And the Prom that's going out on tour. Diana, that's locked up at the Longacre. The Prom was in the Longacre too. And that's as much as I personally can do. I also sit on a lot of arts boards.
I know you do.
And I chair one too. So that's a lot. The way that we've been working is with Zoom meetings.
Mm-hmm. How do you balance it out, Margot? You're on so many boards. How do you balance it all out?
I don't know. I'm beginning to think I must be nuts. I just manage. Yeah.
Now, I want to go back earlier. I mentioned that you and we worked together years ago with APAB. Are you still involved with APAB?
No, but I plan to be, because I think just like NAMP, the National Alliance for Musical Theater, the thing that's missing is the interface between commercial producers and university development productions.
Mm-hmm.
Universities are a tremendous resource for Broadway. And I plan to make my case with APAP next year and start to be a little more involved because of that. And the same thing with NAMT. I think it's very important. I had a musical which is never going to happen because the writers basically attempted to kill each other. And but this is not good.
That's the history of theater, Margot.
Yeah, they get a little like that. Anyway, what are you going to do? But it was a lovely musical, and we did it at the University of Alabama, which has a subscription house and a terrific theater department and a terrific musical theater department. And I learned in that what a wonderful resource a university is when you have professional theater people teaching there, you know, and students who can be ensemble and so on. It should be. So I plan to be a little more involved. I don't know that I would do a booth again at this point, but I certainly plan to get a little more involved. There's leadership there. Yeah.
Because of the economics of producing on Broadway, and what resources do you feel that a lot of people are not really utilizing, that from your point of view, that you say, if we can tap into this, it's going to be a game changer?
Well, as I just mentioned, universities. And I think probably that's the biggest one that is relatively untapped. And it benefits everybody, the student, it benefits everyone, really. And I also think that a lot of people that think, oh, well, I can't invest in theater, you know, I'll lose my shirt. Well, yeah, you could, but you also can have a very joyous experience and a very nice tax write-off. So, you know, I think that for the ordinary theater lover who thinks they can't be involved, it's a wonderful way to be involved, because if you invest, you get bulletins. If your producer that you come in through is right, does their job, you'll know what's going on and you will feel very much involved. I think it's, you know, there are people across the country who would love to do it.
And when did you first feel that true sense of, I am a Broadway producer? And again, I know that you've produced in London and you've produced many other things as well, as you said.
I think probably the opening night of Clear Day, when I thought, oh my goodness, this is real.
Fasten your seatbelts, everyone. Here we go.
Yeah, because I had done the Commercial Theater Institute, you know, the 14-week program that I teach you. And there's a funny story about that. There was a wonderful man who was one of the founders of the Commercial Theater Institute. And we had a terrible blizzard in New York one night, very sudden, unexpected blizzard. And the classes were always on a Monday evening because theater is normally dark on a Monday. The snow is coming down. You can't even get out. I called him that afternoon and he wasn't even in his office. And I said, are we having class tonight? There were no buses running, just subways, you know, that kind of thing. And then I went out to get some milk, I think, or something banal like that, you know, trudging across the street. And I come back and on my answering machine, it said, if you can't take the snow, how are you going to take the critics?
Oh my God. I would put that on my tombstone.
Needless to say, we all showed up somehow. We got there. Yeah.
Oh my God. You know, my first show that I got cast in New York City was in 1980. I was living in the North Bronx, and my first day, this was April 1st, 1980. I remember the date because I'm living in the North Bronx, and the trains, the buses, everything went on strike. And I said, nothing is going to keep me away from that first rehearsal. And I got there. And so what a brilliant, brilliant thing to say. I absolutely love that. And so,
but you're right. We do. I don't know how we do, but we do.
And we're getting through this as well, and we're going to get through it. But I want to ask you, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned since you started as a producer?
I think how to accept co-producers and partners, totally different ideas, not push back, listen, digest, because this is a team. It doesn't work with a bunch of individuals. It's got to be a team. And think, why did they say that? And realize very often that there are interesting reasons. It's a wonderful ensemble work experience. That's the biggest lesson, because having come from being a journalist and having to be on my own, to be part of a professional family was, I think, a growth experience, very much so. And I'm sure you found that in the cast, because you're very much a generous performer.
Well, thank you.
The kind of generosity that's necessary that you have.
Well, one of my favorite words on the planet is collaboration. Mm-hmm. It's all about collaboration. And as I always say, and especially now, I've said this in many shows, because of, we're doing everything in our homes now, we have a greater appreciation for the men and women who do the sound and the lights in the theater. And please understand, everyone, it's not just what happens on those boards. There's a whole village going on behind the scenes, backstage, getting the show to Broadway, all the work. Margot, I can't believe this, but we are at the end of our show. And I told you, how was it for you?
I was scared, but it was really, I'm being honest, but it was a good experience.
Thank you.
We do know each other so long. So
I had a blast today.
You're really good at this. You're very good.
I learned a lot today. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And if you enjoyed the show, and I hope that you did, please, please, please leave a comment on whatever platform you're watching this or listening to this on. And the reason for that is because it increases the ranking with where I am positioned with iTunes, on YouTube, and across the board. So please, please, please do that. And do you remember who our mentor was for our booth when you and I did the first booth?
I don't. Who was
Arthur
it?
Schaffman.
Oh my goodness, that's right.
Arthur Schaffman, and I bring him up because Arthur Schaffman was the manager for Rita McKenzie, who I'm interviewing tomorrow afternoon.
Oh my goodness.
And do you remember her show, Call Me Ethel?
Yeah.
One of the most successful off-Broadway one-woman shows where she portrayed Ethel Merman. I am so thrilled that I'm going to be sitting down and chatting with her tomorrow afternoon at 3 p.m. Please join us if you can. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to the second name on the list and reach out with a phone call to that person. Not a text message, not an email, not an inbox message, but pick up the phone, call that person, and let them know what they mean to you. As my dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone else is going through right now. Margot, I love you so much. And this afternoon means a lot to me. So thank you for being here. I'm going to give you the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's listening now. And again, thank you for all you do.
What I would say is, like you, Richard, follow your dreams. Don't be afraid. Just do it. That would be my word for today.
Just do it. Thank you. I love you, Margot. Have a good day. Thank you.